Ready? Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm going to call this special meeting of the Board of Equalization of Oklahoma County to order. Today is Wednesday, May the 28th, 2025. It is now 9:30. We have a full house. Mr. Brett Town.
Present.
Ms. Teresa Sellers.
Present.
I'm Eleanor Thompson. Notice of this meeting was properly posted on May 22nd, 2025. Today we have 7 items. We have 1 residential and the rest are commercial, and we're going to go out of order to the last item on the agenda, BOE number 120, because it's residential. We don't want him to sit through all the commercials. Okay, this is how this works. Have you ever appeared in front of us before? Okay. So the assessor has set the valuation of your property at $667,000, then lowered it to $654,000. You, however, think 30, 6323 and 6325 Avalon Lane in Oklahoma City. Is this a duplex?
It is, ma'am.
Oh, that's why I got you. Okay, so tell us about your property and why you think it should be valued at $560,000.
Well, first, thank you for letting
Sure.
me speak with y'all.
Oh, sure.
You all probably know duplexes are an unusual commodity, a little harder to sell, a little harder to market. My property is 1 house off of Northwest 63rd Street, which is a busy street. My neighbor, who's between me and 63rd, he's right on the corner, sold his house a few months ago. The whole thing. And
It was a duplex?
it's a duplex.
Okay.
It's nicer than mine. I'm gonna put my property down a little bit, but we're not falling apart. His home is about maybe 100, 150 square feet less than mine. It's a 1-story. Mine, we did an addition last year that added over 500 square feet. During COVID, we found out our attic was completely open. We had no HVAC up there. So we just built up and we popped it out a little bit. So we improved our property. I digress a little bit. My neighbor, I guess my biggest point really, my neighbor sold his for $400,000 a few months ago. And the county software shows that it was a multi-property sale. And so it would not count that as a reasonable comp for me. And when I spoke with the gentleman, Drew Mitchell, nice fellow, in the assessor's office, he told me that it couldn't be fixed. And I explained to him that I felt like this was the truest possible comp to look at my property because it was sold just a few months prior. It was both sides, the same day, the same sale. It had been condominiumized some years earlier. So in that process, it looked like 2 different houses, but the sale was for $400,000 for the whole thing. And I know the gentleman. I've been friends with him for years. He had offered me the property for $400,000. I can't afford it. I can't do anything now. I don't want any more property. The people that own the duplex on the other corner, just across Avalon, right there on 63rd, that's an out-of-town couple. They went ahead and bought it for $400,000, and they closed on both sides of the property the same day, the whole duplex.
Did this happen in 25 or 24?
25.
Okay, so let me tell you that the valuation is as of 12/31/2024.
Yes, ma'am.
So they are not going to consider a sale that occurred in 2025 until next year.
I want to make sure that it is considered next year if I could.
Sure.
Just because I feel like it would really change mine and give a truer perspective.
Right.
I think that I may have to live with what y'all decide for this year.
Mm-hmm.
But next year, I really want that to be looked at because it's a legit comp. And I realize that I'm told that because it's a 1-story, it doesn't count as much because we add it on ours and makes us, I think that it says 1.5 stories, but it's a 2nd story. We didn't add water. We didn't add a bathroom. We didn't add anything that traditionally you think would give extra value to an add-on.
What is
space?
Is it just space?
It's space. We have 2 rooms and a big closet.
So let me know where. So I traveled that. There's a bank on Grand Boulevard, 63rd. Am I going to continue west to get to Avalon?
You go, continue west and you go up a hill. Glenbrook's on the left. There's a little, there's a couple of streets. There's a little circle drive.
What's the light?
There is no light.
But there is a light. What street is that?
You have to go all the way to Penn. There's not a light between Grand and Penn.
Yes, there is.
It's a big.
There's a light right here.
Yeah, what street is that?
This is Pennsylvania's. Here's the Waterford complex. And there's their house right here. Here's the Waterford complex.
It's behind the water.
Yeah.
Behind, yeah.
And here's the subject property right here.
It's in between. There's not a lot.
Oh, wait. I'm not crazy here. There's
One
a
at
bank and there's another one.
The bank is on Western. You're talking about Haynes.
No,
Haynes Capital
I
and
do
Bank
this
7.
all the time. It's a strange light.
Oh, it's that one's at Grand. That
No.
There's
West of there's another light. That's okay.
Yeah.
I'm still east of where he is.
Thanks.
He's west of there.
I think
Okay,
that's,
so I don't get to French Market Mall. Oh, Penn.
French Market
it's not
Mall.
May. You're thinking of
Oh,
May.
sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
There is a light.
Yeah, there is a light in
Zilla.
between right outside
Yeah.
of
Okay, that's great.
that country club.
Sorry.
Yeah, that really nice addition there. Yeah.
Okay, so let me back up. There's something there on Penn. And so you're east of Penn?
We're east of Penn.
Okay. Behind, okay. I got
Just
you. I'm straight.
there'll be a small block past the Waterford. That's part of the addition, and then the next street over is Avalon.
Okay.
Isn't Duffner in there?
Yeah, Duffner. I have a home on Duffner. I'm not, I'm okay, but do
So,
play.
but the issue, I'm going to tell you for next year, your argument, your issue is going to be whether, because it's a condo, whether it's different from a duplex. However, that's going to be your argument for next year. You got to come up with a different argument for this year because we're going to stop our proof at 12/31/24.
Okay.
What was your valuation a year ago?
It was $495.
$495.
And so, the contractor put an $85,000 estimate for our addition.
That occurred in 2024?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, ma'am. It started in 23, finished in 24.
Okay.
So,
Is that what you actually spent?
we spent probably 10 more. We're below 100, but as you all know, sometimes dollars get.
Well, that'd make you 580, and you're asking for 560.
Well, I guess what I would say is I did not know that there would be a dollar for dollar equation with what my addition would be.
Yes.
And the thing I would perhaps suggest is that the county records show that we have 5 bedrooms in this duplex, or five bathrooms. Each side has a full bath and a 3/4 bath. Now, I don't know that makes a difference,
Yeah.
but it's a distinction.
That's 4.
And for a lot of buyers, they would look at that. They would say, well, maybe I don't want a shower. Maybe I want 2 full baths. Additionally, when I
Did you said each side has a bath and a quarter, or bath and a
bath is 3/4.
Bath and three.
So it's got a small shower, 3x5 shower. Additionally, when I spoke with the gentleman on my informal appeal, I said there are other things that aren't taken in consideration in establishing this market value. Like, I have a roof that's getting close to 20 years old. The shingles are curling, and it's older. I've got a crumbling driveway. Like I said, I don't want to put my property down, but I need a paint job all the way around the outside. I have the worst yard in the neighborhood. I keep it mowed. I say that it's bad, not being disrespectful to my neighbors. I keep it mowed, but I have every kind of weed you can imagine. We don't have a sprinkler system.
Not landscape.
Not a landscaper. I'm so sorry. We're just trying to, hold on so we look like we have measles out there. But, I look at it. We need piers. And when I spoke with the assessor, with Drew Mitchell, right, I didn't have enough time to get a genuine appraisal. I didn't know I needed to bring photos. I didn't know how much of a defense or argument I needed to put forth about it. I thought I'd come in and say, hey, this is kind of crazy high. My neighbor, I thought I was doing the right thing by talking about my neighbor's property, not realizing, hey, I thought it was the most recent, but it's the tax year. I get it. Mm-hmm. Also, I pointed those things out. I said, for a market sale, those are things that buyers going to look at.
Which
That's
one
my
is
wife's
that?
car. That's us. I said the buyer's going to look at those things. So
you live in one side and rent the other?
Yes.
What do you get in rent on the other side?
Not enough. We charge $14.50.
Okay.
And I've got a nice fellow there. He's a retired banker. Quiet, doesn't party very much. Good guy. So, I said it to me. I think just looking at the place, you'd have to take $50,000 or $60,000 off the top. A buyer would, if I didn't do those things to make our home sellable.
Sure.
I mean, as a buyer, that's what I'd be like. Dude, you need piers. I spent $1,000 a couple months ago fixing my garage door. We have a double wooden garage door that, because we need a pier on that brick wall there, it made my door do some crazy stuff.
Did you tell that to them when you talked to them?
I don't think I specifically said about the money that I spent. I hope I mentioned the garage door. I tried to walk through the things I thought needed improvement.
Sure. Okay.
But
One of the things that's kind of caught you in this is a significant add-on, which changes the year of your house. It may have been built in 90, but you have a significant add-on, and then it raises the effective year. So that's one of the things. And the other one is a remodel of about, it may be 50%. I don't know. We haven't heard that from that. But there's a condition in there. And then I think looking at this, it's the assessor rates it as good condition. So that also, some of the things that you're talking about have taken it down from excellent, good, and then you don't want to be in that fair area. That's pretty getting lower quality. So anyway, those are some of the factors that are working against you this year. But as you said before, the most significant one is the sale next to you, which you think will lower it, because sales are the most indicator of the value of homes. And we can't consider that this year, but we could next year.
Well, I think we have to wait and hear from the assessor's office to see if that was a valid sale, because there seemed to be an indication that it was a
Let's hear from the assessor.
property sale. Yeah.
Do you want me to answer that question first or go into this
You
first?
just win this.
Okay. Property is located off Northwest 63rd and Penn. The square footage after the add-on is 4,270 square feet. The entire add-on square footage that was added to the subject was 636 square feet. And that is after we were supplied the building plans for that. I had a previous note from a previous appraiser who was out there that stated that we were told it was between 400 and 450. And then once we actually got the blueprints, it was 636. So we actually had to adjust that. We did run 2 sets of comps. There is a 3 comp report in there and a 5 comp report in there. The 3 comp report is ours. There are different years that those were sold. But the mean and the median are coming in pretty close. The mean is 654,027. The median is 654,000. 385. On the 5 comp report, oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay, the 5 comp report is actually the comps that were provided to us that were arm's length transactions.
Okay.
Those comps come in with a mean at 657,042 and a median of 654,385.
And here's below both.
And they're
Right at.
Yeah, we're right at it.
Right.
And like what Mr. Town said, the thing that's being adjusted the most or affecting the comps is the effective age because of the remodel. We do have to take that into consideration.
What about the bathroom issue? Because he indicated that you do show that he has 5, but he's saying he has 4 or.
I mean, we can change that for next year. I don't have a note that states that was brought up during the informal. I'm not saying that it wasn't at all.
Did you all assume that there was a bathroom put upstairs?
Not in the notes that I have from the previous appraisers that were out there.
Why did you lower it from 667 to 654?
Because of the comps that we ran and that were provided. They both were in the 654,000 range, so we lowered it to that. And I think that is fair, especially because we did have an addition to the property. On the sale that was brought up on the neighbor, I actually did a hearing on that property this year. The reason that it's a multi-property or MP is what it says is because even though it is a duplex, it's actually 2 separate accounts.
Yeah, because
because it is 2 separate accounts, it is what we call a multi-property purchase. Depending, like yours is one big one, as you can see. That's why the square. Oh, you're on the other one. Okay. The entirety of that duplex is all together. And then if you'll go back to the account you're talking about, that's only half of the duplex. So for some reason, at some point, they were divided. And that is why it's the multi-property purchase.
But can you confirm that it was sold for $400,000 for both sides?
It was, but it's because it was distressed. Like there are issues with it. I've had the pictures to prove it. I have them on my desktop. I did the hearings and I got those from the owner. So, and they're remodeling one of them. I can't remember which one, but it's currently being remodeled.
But you wouldn't consider that anyway because it was 25.
It's actually end of 24. It was December 23.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But there was issues with that property and it way undersold.
Okay, now tell me whether the 3% cap works when you have a remodel. It does.
It doesn't. That
Okay,
cap
so-
comes off.
Because I was going to say, but look at your percentage of increase over last year.
We're talking about on the taxable.
No,
What?
no,
The 3% cap doesn't pertain.
right.
But the cap did come off on
Yes.
the taxable
Yes.
because of the remodel,
Yes.
which means that he did have a $167,000 increase because of that.
129,005 is on the new construction part of it.
Okay, answer his question about does it go dollar for dollar or could it go more?
It can go more.
Will it ever go less?
It wouldn't go less.
Okay.
I don't have a note about the dollar amount that was spent. I don't know if that was mentioned in the informal with Drew on how much was spent on that. Okay.
And have you explained the adjustments on your comps?
I can. Pull up. Let's do the 5. So these are the comps that were provided to us. Go up to 1, 2, 3. So for instance, the square footages, we're making a small adjustment, but the big adjustment that is on all of these is going to be that effective age, which is the 3rd line below characteristics. Your effective age is going to be 41, but I don't like that comp. But comp 1 and comp 2 are going to be the most comparable, and they have a higher effective age. We see the other side of that, comp 3 is actually lower than the effective age. Keep
And
going
these
down.
were comps that were provided by him,
Mhm.
correct? That
Yes,
he
yeah,
ran.
the 5 comp report was. Same thing on comp 4 and comp 5. We do make adjustments for the square footage, also for the effective age. Because of the addition, it does change that effective age. These could have been built the same time, but they, from our knowledge, do not have an addition or a remodel or anything like that to those properties. So we make percent adjustments in that right column there to each individual item that is on that list on the far left.
So interesting, that one on Duvner sold for, in June of 24 for 656,000. That's even before the adjustments.
Yeah, and that's you're looking at the first comp. Yeah, that's on our report as well. On R3, it sold for 650 before any
That's
adjustments at all,
probably the one that's hurting the most.
and it's in the neighborhood.
And it's in there. Yeah, there's one on Avalon that sold for 630,000 in April of 23. That's not helping you either. That one actually comps out to just about the same price that you set it at.
Okay, now you get the final word.
Well, thank you. As far as Danny's, my neighbor, his sale, it absolutely is a duplex that was sold together. It's condominiumized because years ago they made a decision that they might want to sell a house. And in our neighborhood, some of the homes are like that. Some people want to own the whole thing and lease it out, and some split it up. You can make that argument either way. When I bought it from my mom in 98 or 99. We chose to keep it as a single unit. I knew she'd live on one side for a while, whatever. Regarding the remediation of Danny's home, the one that was sold, it's minor. And I would strongly object that somehow it's a distressed property. I've been in there. I know the people that bought it. It was offered to me. I've been through it. I know some of the issues. Photos can look like whatever they look like. It's not a big deal. Some of the work's been done. More will be done. But it's not a distressed property. So I really strongly disagree with that. As far as the effective date,
Effective age.
the effective date on my property to take an addition, I guess you're saying it's 600 square feet, or whatever it is. If the total square footage of the home prior to this was in the neighborhood of 3,800 square feet, we add 600 square feet. I mean, I'm ballparking these figures. It is beyond my comprehension, truly, to understand how that addition, which added, roughly a fifth more to our property, how that could equate to a 10-year renewal, that our home is now 10 years newer. No, it's not. 80% of our home is still the same. It's still 50 years old. And for me, I don't understand how that could be. You can call that extra 600 square feet, you can call it brand new. It doesn't change the 50-year-old house that I have that needs piers, roof, blah, 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 blah. So I would say that about that as far as the effective date. The location, we're not a speedway, but we're not a slowdown either. When people pull into our neighborhood, as you know, if your house is on the corner of a busy street, that has less value than a home a block and a half or 2 blocks in. And for me, my life is neither here nor there, but I've got a 3.5-year-old daughter. And when we want to play in the front yard, we put cones in. We put orange cones, and we sit in that front yard, in that driveway, and if we want a little peace and quiet, we walk farther into the neighborhood because it's safer, quieter, the homes have greater value, I've lived in this neighborhood on and off, really, since 1977. Duplexes they sell slowly. And a lot of times people put them on the market and they take them back off. They get handed to other family members. People marry, they hold the home, and it's passed along. So the value is not there. If I had to do things over, I don't know that I would have bought a duplex, but 25 years ago I bought one on Duffner. It's in the back of the neighborhood, backs up to the cemetery. I like it. I lived there for many years. It's quiet, and that's where we go to play. The Duffner sale that affects mine, I would just say location. To me, it's a premium location going that much farther away from 63rd Street. Instead of hearing the cars on 63rd, you can hear birds. It's nice. I've got good people living in the home that I still own there and maintain. And that sale price, that six something, I know the guy. He really wanted that home. I could get into that, but he paid what he paid. Good for him. Avalon, the sale on Avalon, on the corner of Avalon and Glenbrook, it's a larger home, much better shape than mine.
Is your gripe the value that they've set or the taxes? What is your real gripe?
Both men. In fairness, I think the market value is high, and I don't.
Because we don't concern ourselves with tax prevention. I just wanted to know what your real concern.
My tax bill goes up $1,800 because of this new assessment.
Oh, I see.
And for me, our little world, that's a big deal. And I know I could never get 654 if I were to try to market that home. I don't think I will. I don't mean to be a smart aleck, but if anyone wants to buy it for 654, we'll sell it. I talked to my wife this morning, and she said, "Yeah."
Okay.
And so I guess that's it for me.
Okay. Thank you. So you'll probably get a letter from us probably Monday.
I thank you.
Okay. You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to close the hearing on BOE number 120, and I'm going to go. Does she have all of them?
It's true.
She just has two. And what happens? We phone call on the other, or the first four? You phone call on the first four? Let's take her. Come on, ma'am. She got the bills. She has 119 and what else?
121.
Okay. This one. Okay, so you heard all of that explanation and you kind of figured it out. Okay. So I'm going to open up the hearing on BOE number 119. And it's item 5 on our agenda. Account number R205091000 805 West Covell Road. What is this?
Yes, ma'am.
Is this a strip mall?
It is a strip mall. It's two parcels, or it's two accounts, excuse me. So it's the 805 West Covell Road, and then the next protest, which is 775 West Covell Road. They're all one long unit.
But for purposes of the hearing, we got to take them separate.
Yes.
Okay, so tell me. Okay, so my notes indicate that the assessor began at $2,031,988 and dropped to $1,431,275, and you think the valuation is better at $973,926. And I had a question here. What is the other income? When I looked at the income analysis. Okay, tell us why you want us to value this at 973.
Yes, ma'am. And I actually have it for the panel, and we submitted to the assessor's office as well. It should have been included. Have you seen this?
I have no. I think that one's in already, unless it's in a different form.
So this was the whole packet submitted with our cover letter, and it includes the 976s, and then it includes authorization, obviously, and then our income analysis, a profit and loss statement, and a rent roll.
Okay,
And I have copies of just the evidence. So you didn't have a copy. I have a
I
copy
have
here.
a copy of the rent rolls and the profit and loss, not
Okay.
the analysis.
Okay. Well, they were included with our formal protest packet.
now formal, not the informal,
Uh,
or is that what you're calling?
we submitted the profit and loss and the rent roll with the informal. And then we, via email, communicated because they asked for any other additional evidence. We communicated this via email to, I believe, Steve Storr. Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Steve Storr.
Okay,
You need this, you need a copy. Okay. Okay, so this is going to be somewhat confusing. I think the arguments are going to be the same for the two itemized protests.
So the package you just gave us is for the 775 West Cobell, which is at 121, and we're on 119.
Yes, ma'am, it actually addresses both locations. So 775 and 805,
Oh, I see.
they're treated together on the profit and loss, so we did an income analysis on both. So our arguments are going to be the same.
the same,
Okay.
okay.
So if you look at this income approach, so we have the rental income that's shown on the profit and loss statement. So that's included in the income line item, or the rent income line item. And then in the recoveries line item, if you turn to the second page, I have a note there. So on the profit and loss statement, there's a line item for additional rent income, which is $78,426.
What is that?
So this
That's
property has a triple net piece. So if you look at the rent roll, which is the very last page in the packet, kind of in the middle, there's bracketed operating expenses. And they use some abbreviations, so I'll just mention these. So CAM is common area maintenance, insurance, and then tax, which is property tax. So those are considered the additional rent income line item on the profit and loss statement.
Okay.
So going back to the first page, and slow me down if I'm going to.
Well, that answered, because that was my note. So go back to what page?
So back to the very first page,
Okay.
the line item for recoveries. We have that as $47,089. And that is because I removed the recovery for property taxes. I also have not included property taxes in the operating expenses, which is the next. So I have gross income there, so that's just rent income plus the recoveries excluding property taxes for the gross income of $413,494. And then I have the line item there for expenses. So just to go back briefly to the gross income, one area we differ from the assessor on is they have in their income, they have not removed the property tax recovery. So that's one note there for the difference between our analysis and the assessor's office. Under expenses, you can see on the second page kind of the itemization of the expenses. So we didn't include everything from the expenses on the profit and loss statement. We included common area maintenance, insurance, deposit fees, repairs and maintenance, what they call on the profit and loss property improvements, a utility expense, professional fees, realtor commissions, and then dues and fees. And how we differ from the assessor's office is really those two middle lines for repairs and maintenance, landlord, and property improvements. And I do have I have an itemization of that property improvements line item for $116,863. I have an itemization of that if that's helpful. I don't believe that, I can't remember if I emailed this to the assessor's office.
Should we be dividing these into half for each one of them?
So that is the complication, yeah. So since the profit and loss statement is, it's encompasses both parcels.
Right.
It's not an exact half division because I think one is 52% and one is 48%, but close enough. And I think in the assessor's income analysis, it ends up being exactly half, if I remember correctly. Or it's really close.
Okay.
So, and I'm certainly happy to do the math there on the percentage.
50 is close enough.
So just really quick to go back to that property improvements line item, that's kind of where we differ from the assessor's office on the expense side. And I have a itemization of the property improvements. And that was what I was saying. I'm not sure if I provided those to the assessor's office.
The itemizations. Okay. Can you pull a picture up so I can understand what this is?
It's not a true strip mall in that sense. It's large buildings that are spaced on a lot.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Now tell me, so
Hold on.
So can you tell us which one is
which
805 and which is 775?
Actually, that is a great question. I think there is a drive-through between the two, and that's probably why they're treated as two different parcels. If you, let's see, the rent roll also.
UPS trucks to me. It looks like they're having their morning coffee there.
It's always funny what you see on the Google imaging. So the rent roll it doesn't break it down between the two addresses because for their purposes, they just operate it as one unit. So I'm actually not sure without mapping it out
Which
is which, yeah.
well, is one going to be on one side and one on the other, or are they both over there to the left?
I believe it's one on the left and one on the right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But they treat it all as one
Yes. They operate
because it's all part of the village.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And these are, and I should say that I believe
The one we're on now is
we're at 805. Okay, so that was built in 2003. And the other property we haven't gotten to yet, 775, was built in 2007. So I believe they were, staggered. So one's a little bit older. So this 805 is a little bit.
I think before we look at this piece of evidence that the assessor's office has not seen yet, I'd like to hear from the assessor's office first to kind of see how they feel about all the other evidence that you provided, and then we'll talk about that.
Do you mind if I kind of conclude without going into this? So because we differ on income, their income is going to be slightly higher because they've included property taxes. I think we're at 413,494 total. They're at 444,832 on gross income. For our expenses, which we didn't get into the improvements yet, but we're at 242,022, and they are at 158,780. So because they're a little bit higher on income and lower on expenses, that's where the value shift is.
Did you look at a sales approach?
We did not do a sales approach on this property, just mainly because it's in two different units and it's a little weird. So we just looked at income.
okay.
My name is Raphael Blez. I'm going to be representing the assessor's office today. So I can't really speak to the evidence that she provided, but I'm okay with allowing it. It's fine. It's good information. So we're supposed to form an opinion of value based on market parameters. The original hearing officer went ahead and decided to use their actual income and expenses in order to come up with value. That being said, if they did include taxes on the income, it probably should have been taken. If I were to use market parameters, then their PGI, the potential gross income, would be around $20 a square foot. The last leasing activity that I saw on this property was in 2007 for about $17 a square foot. So if I were to use those market parameters, the one on 775 would have an income indicated value of around $1,742,000, and the one located on 805 would have an income indicated value of $1,907,000. We decided to go ahead and just treat it as one economic unit and use their actual income, expenses, and vacancy using a 10% cap rate, and just split the total down the middle between each of the properties at $1,431,000.
How did you end up at 10% and they did a 9.16?
Right. So I think that there was some high vacancy associated with this property, which is why the original hearing officer went with a 10% capitalization rate to try to appeal. Right. When I did some research for the submarket, the unloaded cap rate, which doesn't have the effective tax rate loaded onto it, was at around 6.5%, which would make the loaded cap rate somewhere around 7.8. My analysis after all of the hearing was done, so I used a 9. I used a 9 in order to come up with the 1.7.
But that you did split them up then, so your total valuation for both properties then is well over $3 million.
Yes, on my analysis. Now, we went ahead and did 2.86 million total, original hearing officer did, and just split that up evenly, 1.431 million.
Are you agreeing with her or disagreeing with her that you didn't back out the tax?
I don't think that we did back out the taxes, and in
Should
this
it?
analysis, we probably should have.
And what difference would that make in your valuation? Because you guys are $500,000.
In my analysis where I came up with the 1.7 to 1.9, I did back out the taxes. Yes, but in
We
this
don't have a
original
copy.
analysis,
You don't have
the
a
taxes
copy
were
of that analysis.
I did not have a copy.
Well,
No,
but
it was
that's-
just
And I would
because it wasn't provided in the original hearing. So
and it's higher than what you ended up with, so I disregard it because you're at 1.42.
right.
4.431. Okay, so do you understand why you're do either one of you understand why you're $500,000 apart?
If I can speak to that, I think like we said, I kind of talked about the difference in the income and the expenses. I did back out the property taxes from their analysis. So I applied basically our income that did back out property taxes, and then I used their expense. So I kind of did a tabulation to see if I could back out the property taxes from their analysis, their original analysis. And
You mean the 1.9?
No,
The original analysis was at 1 point.
the 1.4.
No, their original analysis was 2 million, and then they dropped it.
Drop it to one.
Sorry,
Yeah.
excuse me. I should say after the informal.
Okay.
The analysis that we received.
And if you back it out of the 1.4, where would you be? I want him there. Where would you be if you backed it?
Let me see if I can make. What was
Because now this for him, he did a 50-50, which I'm going to tell you I don't disagree with. I mean, it's just not worth fighting over 2%. So
Sure.
okay, so where would it be?
What was the amount in taxes that was total for the,
It-
for the,
From the rent roll,
yes,
it is $31,337.52.
$31,357?
337.
and 52 cents.
Hmm. That's gonna put him in for just almost a flat 1,000,004. Are we taking the
It might
31?
be half.
Oh, no, that's my half.
Yeah.
She needs to take half.
Yes. I'm taking half of that. So that would actually put her around 1,274,000.
And that's what I calculated to removing property taxes from there now.
1,274,000.
Yes, per parcel,
You're still,
for a total of 2.2, or excuse me, 200,000,000,
Less on the
500.
she's
It's
973.
889 on 899.
Bill, you said this was a high vacancy and the rent roll only shows one vacancy, about 5%.
Was it?
There's actually two. So there's the gray at the bottom,
Okay, got it.
4,600. And then there's the 1521.
So about 20%, over 20%.
Which is pretty high for this.
And that was one of the larger square foot. Must have been on one end.
Yeah.
I can't think what was there. One time.
So what about that 116 document? So you said you'd be willing to accept these documents. Did you hear what she was talking about explaining that 116
But
was
his
the
cap
property
rate
improvements?
benefits you. Yeah,
Property
116,000.
improvements. She had some detail that she had not presented in the inform.
I can show you real quick.
Was he close enough to you on the repairs and maintenance? Was he just off on the improvements?
I think it's primarily, yes, the improvements.
I'm okay with accepting this as well.
Do you want to keep that copy?
Sure.
Okay, so the assessor is now down at 1,274. Is the assessor gonna move any? Are you gonna move any? Are you gonna, you
But
guys
he
gonna?
might, I'm wondering if he might with this. I mean, that's why I'm curious to hear what this is, because she says this is one of the big differentiators between her.
What was, and his was, I wrote it down.
So,
His was, oh, she didn't say.
Let me see this one.
Gross income expenses, yours were 158. Or his was 158 and yours was 242. So the question is whether he'll come up. Is this that you just gave us, if his analysis of this would make him change his 158, 780?
yes, if
That's your question.
if we were to take into account more of these maintenance items that were done last year in the expense category.
Did he have
And
none of them?
I had a difficult time. He did include, or they did include line items for some repairs, but I had a hard time tying it out to the our profit and loss statement. And so that may be something you could speak to.
Or which repairs? Are you saying he didn't take any of these into consideration?
He had $8,500 in repairs, it looks like, just on 805. Am I reading that
Yes,
correctly?
I think he has for both properties, or if we just want to look at 805, he has 8,500 for major repairs line item.
As opposed, now is this 116? Am I to take half of this, or is this the entire 116 for 805?
This is, you take half of this.
Take half.
Okay.
So 58 as opposed to 8.
Well, we
That's-
could, it looks like you've broken it down by property, so it looks like some of them is specific to 805 and some of it is divided.
then that's-
You do itemize that, so, but that's okay, we can do that math. I'm just trying to, so go ahead and speak your argument on this.
So it is our position that the expenses are actually a little higher than what the assessor's office has calculated. And it is primarily due to this itemization that I provided for property improvements, which is a line item on the profit and loss statement that was in that 4-page packet that I gave you guys. So in this listing of property improvements, it kind of really shows that kind of some replacements, things that had to be done last year because of the age of the property. So they did some work on the roof, they did some work on the fire sprinkler systems, but these are all, normal maintenance items, replacements, and not that would properly be considered maintenance as expenses in an income analysis. So that's why ours includes the full 116,863.
805 only is 25,000. Are we supposed to split the rest of it in half? That question.
Yeah,
Well,
I actually had not, and that's a great point.
the paint is for 805 by itself is 18,000, and the demolition is 7,000 for 805 by itself. So it's 25,000 by itself. The rest of it,
Another one for 805, only that's just
It's
$1,100.
a sprinkler.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the others, then we just have to do. I'll slap them all on the spreadsheet, do the on it.
So sorry that I have not done that.
That's all right. But he has $8,500 on 775 as well, so I'm curious what the assessor has to say about these.
About this conflict report.
Yeah, about the expenses that she's saying that you said you would accept.
Yes, I believe that most of this has already been accounted for in reserves. Sprinkler system, the roofing. It's typical to have 3% of EGI in reserves. I do see like dumpster services could probably be added on to expenses to that full amount. But everything else looks to be accounted for reserves.
And you've got 6,672 in reserves.
Mhm.
And 6,670. But there's still a difference.
Yes, there is going to be, because reserves account for the life of the roof, for example. If it's a 20-year roof, then you take the cost of the roof and then divide it by 20 to get the reserve for that year.
Just like to point out, because of the age of the property, these are going to become more and more common maintenance items, some of the things that are listed here. And if we don't include them, or if we had chosen not to make those replacements last year, then more than likely, especially like the sprinkler system and the roof, our insurance expense probably would have increased. So that's kind of, we've included them in the improvements because it makes more sense there. But I think if we were to lessen that amount, then we'd probably have to estimate a higher insurance cost.
so if we end up just not even considering the half of what we're going to have, the 26 and your reserves were how much? 8? No, your total expenses were 85. How much were your reserves?
Reserves were 6,672.
That
Or
was
6,670
666.70 on, I think this one's 80. This is 119.
So about 6,670. There is a small difference.
Yeah, it's a little bit different between the two, but not much.
So that means, to me, that means that with her 116, we would have to subtract about 15 from her ask, and then we'll fuss over what part of 805 is in $100,000. Just we follow that. I backed out his reserve and his expenses.
And with his reserves, says are times 20, right?
Well,
It's not
it
just-
depends. It depends on what's being repaired or replaced. So if it's a 20-year roof, for example, then you would divide the cost of the roof repair, the roof replacement by 20 in order to get the cost for that year, which is what the owner is supposed to put aside each year for those kinds of repairs.
And is it a similar, I mean, obviously that's the biggest expense on here, right? That's $33,950. Is there a similar calculation for painting, building exterior?
7 years.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure about the specifics on each one of those, but that's why we kind of just wrap it up all into a 3% of EGI because that is typical.
So how much of this 100, I'm going to say, how much of the 100 are you willing to accept for each one of them? Would you take 100 and divide it into half and put 50?
The only thing right off the top of my head that I would definitely take is the construction dumpster services. You can take that full value and just put it as a service expense.
Just 470.
Right.
It's a rounding error.
Do I need to have you do another calculation and tell us on Friday?
Sure, I could.
Or do you think you can do it today?
I could, like I said, the point that I was trying to make here is that I think the 1.4 million for each is already too low. My analysis after the original hearing came up with a higher value.
I got it. Okay.
And I think from our perspective, if we did the calculation, just removing their calculation after the informal, just removed the property taxes, kept their expenses, used a loaded cap rate since that would have removed property taxes. We'd be happy with
1274.
Well, a little bit lower, 2.283 with a loaded cap rate. This would be 2,283,341 with a loaded cap. That's excluding property taxes from the NOI, but then using
And
the
then we have to
loaded
take
cap
it in and divide it in half,
and divide it in half.
and you come up with
Great question. $1,141,670.
Sorry, could you say that again?
1,141,670.
Yes.
But did you just say, Raphael, that you thought the 1,000,004 was too low?
Yes, according to my analysis that I did, but since it wasn't done during the original hearing, I can't provide anything.
Okay.
To that.
Okay. I'm good. So our difference is 1,431 to 1,141. Okay. So if I can keep that in my head, I'm gonna close BOE number 119, and we will go to BOE 121, which is 775 West Cobell, and that is R 206,981,000. The assessor began at $2,051,650 and dropped to $1,431,255, and you're at $899,008. Raphael, is it your statement that you think the $1,431,255 is too low?
Yes.
Okay. So, so can you make a calculation and come up with the number you would get, just how you did on the other one?
It's the same one, because she just divided it
Yeah.
too.
Yes, so, our calculation, having excluded property taxes, using the assessor's expenses, and the assessor's cap rate loaded to count for property taxes, was a total of 2,283,341, and divided in half, that was $1,141,670.
I do have one quick question, because I noticed the value last year was considerably more, it was over 2 million, and even more than that in 23, 22, and 21. I'm assuming this is the first year it's been tested?
I am not, this is a new property for us, so I'm not super familiar with the history.
I'm just curious why it was reduced so much. You know, it was pretty high for the last 4 or 5 years.
I don't remember if the last 2 years this property come before us.
It did not. No, I would remember this one.
It didn't go to the board, but it did have a hearing on it.
It did have an informal
It
last
did
year.
have an informal last year.
20,
In 21, it went to the board.
oh, and
In
20.
21, it went to the board. In 24, there was an informal as well.
We did not participate in that last year.
But the
Maybe the
final,
reason why they hired you this year.
but the final valuation last year was what?
2 million.
It did go down, it looks like.
51,000 for each, and the original valuation was at, it would be, it went down from 2,288,000. The original
2
value,
million.
288,784.
Okay. All right, well, unless you think you have something valuable to add, we pretty much are gonna accept the argument we made in the other one for this one.
Thank you.
Since we split it in half. Just out of curiosity, which one of these did you have 52%?
believe
So this is Covell and Santa Fe?
Both Covell and Kelly. It's east of Covell and Kelly. Covell, north side of the road.
7 is close to Kelly. Okay, because Kelly's 1,000.
so we had the 775 West Covell at 48%, and the 805 West Covell at 52%. That may line out with
Yeah, it does. If you're 973 versus 899. Yeah. Okay. But the vacancy rate, was that just on 805? Is there a different vacancy rate on 775?
so the vacancy rate was calculated for the full property. The rent roll gives
Okay.
all of the tenants.
Okay, you guys got any more questions? No good. Okay, we're gonna close the
Thank you.
hearing on
Thank you.
121. Sure. Actually, yeah. So you'll probably get the letter Monday.
Thank you.
Sure.
Ready for me?
Thanks for the information. Yeah.
Pivotal Tax Solutions, how can I help you?
Oh, hi. This is Ms. Thompson at the Board of Equalization. Who's speaking?
My name is Whitney.
Are you going to do the hearings?
No, that'll be our agent Wayne Tannenbaum.
Okay, can you get him on the phone?
Yes, I will get you transferred over.
Had him before.
Yeah. This is Arizona. Mm-hmm.
We had this.
Pivotal Tax, this is Wayne.
Hi, this is Miss Thompson. You've been before us before, right?
Many times, yes.
I don't like the way you said that. Okay, so you know that we will hear you individually on these properties, and we will make our decision on Friday and give you notice by mail.
Right.
Okay, so the first one we're going to do is BOE number 115, which is Materials Packing Corps. This is at 6500 South Sunny Lane. And,
Okay.
it's property number R143-925-025. My notes indicate the assessor has this at $3,965,576, and you would like to have us establish the market value, fair market value at $2,300,000 flat. So
Okay.
tell us why there's such a big difference in what you guys believe this property is worth.
Yes. First of all, you have our evidence packet there. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So yes, I mean, I understand there's a big difference, but obviously it's up to the board to decide what's maybe a fair value. I know if you look at our packet, the cover page is important, and hopefully we supplied more pictures of this property. Technically, Old Castle is a property type that we have throughout the country. Typically, they take care of building materials, make building materials for most of North America. And essentially, their properties, their buildings are secondary to them. In other words, they build them close to a shell as possible so they can store all the materials, etc. You know, part of the buildings are metallic or metal type buildings. They're not superior industrial buildings whatsoever.
Right.
That's something to keep in mind as we go through this. One thing to note is that if you look at our page 2, unless I'm seeing things, I believe the prior year value is $2,950,000, or 6158 square foot. Now, unless I'm wrong, this year's value, 2025, is $3,965,575. That is what, a 40% or more increase? I mean, in 1 year, the property has increased $1 million from about 2.9 million to 3.9 million or so. That's quite an increase in value. And I have a feeling that maybe whoever decided on this value did not take into account what the prior appraisers or boards have taken into account, which is this type of property is that way as far as inferior. Not only that, to say that the property is upkept like other properties is definitely not the case. In other words, they're not concerned with their buildings. They're all owner-user. They're mainly concerned with their building materials, obviously, in their product. So these properties are not well maintained, and they're kind of used and abused in a way, which is fine, because it's their property and their buildings. So if they sold it tomorrow, they would sell for less than typical nicer industrial buildings that are well maintained, etc. So I'm not sure why this major increase in values here, but I have a feeling this was looked at as a typical industrial property. Now we have sales, many sales to support a lower value. Now our value says $2,339,419, which is even lower than the prior year, but obviously that seems a little low to me. One thing to note is that I know an increase from the value we have of $2,300,000 should be there because of the land size of the subject. However, this is very important. If you go to our page number 3, you'll notice that, yes, this building is 47,908 square feet, built in 2017. Now, even though this is not a very old building, again, the way that it's constructed, more like a shell, metal type, etc., makes it inferior for that year built. Now, the building itself is 47,908 square feet. Now, the acreage, though, is 9.25 acres. So if we're comparing this to other industrial properties that sold, we need to take the extra land into account of the subject. I understand that. However, according to the county themselves, unless we have it incorrect, on our page 3 you can see the county's value on the entire land portion. They're saying that this land is only worth $350,000. Well, we're not going to question that whatsoever. They said the land is worth $350,000. That is only less than 10% of the entire value of the property. So even if we took a few $100,000 and added it to our sales would never get to the value per square foot that this subject is on for. And I'll explain that when we get to our sales. But please keep in mind that there's very minimal value given to this property. I think 87 cents per square foot. Most of the value is what they have here, which is the $3,615,000 or 75.47 just per square foot, just for the building. Keeping in mind, the entire property had a county value of about 2.95 million the year before, and they're saying the buildings alone are worth 3.6 million this year, not the entire property. As we move along here, we have areas of the subject, and you can see the type of building material and what they do there. I wish we had more pictures. Then there's like a front view. Until we get to our evidence, which we have a number of sales, and that's why we just know sales. Number one, if you try to do income on a property like this, it's very hard because they're not very similar type properties. And typically, to be honest with you, the income approach would support less if you use appropriate lease comps. But I don't think we had fair lease comps, meaning they're probably superior to the subject. However, we do have 6 sales, which is more than enough to show you that the property is overvalued. Now, one thing to take into account is there's a few things to take into account. So the size of the property is somewhat similar to all of our comps, meaning we have comps 1 through 4 range from about 30,000 square feet rounded to about 42,000 square feet rounded, and comps 5 and 6 are about 37,000 to 47,000 square feet. Now, there's 2 other things to note. We definitely adjusted for age. The problem of trying to find these similar type, metal type, almost shell buildings that are newer is very difficult on sale. So we did adjust tremendously, 18%, 35% upwards for these sales that were inferior as far as the age. The thing is, they're similar type buildings, but they're not as new as the subject property. Those were very hard to find. I mean, we increased some of these sales, 30, 40%. What we're trying to tell you is that if you look at, for example, our sales 1 through 4, the similar type properties range from about, the sales from about $41 a square foot to $52 a square foot. Our sales 5 and 6 on the following page sold for between $21 to $32 a square foot.
That's awfully low.
It is. But the subject's not for 83. And you say, well, what is the difference? The difference is twofold. One is the age of the subject and the land. The problem is that you're not going to get to the height of the subject to increase even if you had made adjustments. So what we're trying to say is that, for example, if you look at the prior year value by the county, it was $61.58, which is quite a bit higher than the sales we have here. Well, we adjusted at least 20, 30% on those sales for the age differences. If you adjust at least 20, 30%, maybe you get to about $60, $65 a square foot for the subject, maybe a tiny bit higher. The point being is, how do you get to $83 a square foot? Well, the other thing that's different that we should have accounted for is the difference in size of the land.
Yeah.
The problem is, I get that, but the problem is that the county, and it's not a problem to us, is that they're only giving 87 cents a square foot. They're only giving a total value of $350,000 to the entire land of the subject, which we agree with, which means that maybe only $200,000 of that should be given and added to the sales that were here. So giving fair adjustments after age, let's say you get to about 60, 65 a square foot or more, then you add maybe another, $4 a square foot to the value there for the difference in land, and maybe you get to about $70 a square foot. Now, is $70 a square foot higher than what the value was the prior year? Yes. Mm-hmm. But I'm trying to be kind of more fair and in between, meaning the value of the prior year by the county or the board, whoever decided, was about $61 a square foot round. I'm saying even with adjustments, I don't see how you get to over 70 a square foot. The problem is the value today is almost $83 a square foot by the county. So I believe, in all fairness, that the value did increase from the prior year.
Yes.
But based on all of these sales, I don't see how it is possible to get from these sales that are $40, $50 per foot up to 83.
But aren't you low? Aren't you low at the 2,000,003? Even at
yes.
Yes.
Oh,
okay.
absolutely, right. Absolutely. I'm trying to say, in all fairness, that you're looking at a value of about $3.4 million for the subject. And I hate to say that because we hate to increase the values from the prior year. Sure. But I've done this long enough to know that I'm just trying to be as conservative as possible. And hopefully, and I don't think that, the problem is I don't think the appraisal department was conservative whatsoever or fair whatsoever in increasing $1 million or 30-40% in 1 year. But I can tend to understand the increase somewhat from the prior year. Now we do have the comps, just so you know, we did supply our sales. We did supply all of the pictures and full CoStar printouts of those sales. I'll show you an example real quick and I'll be done soon. On page 15, if you look at that sale, yes, it was built in 1981, but it's superior construction. It's superior. It's not really metal. It's, block and concrete. So yes, you can adjust for age, but what about the fact that it's better quality in a sense? Most of our other sales are this metal type, inferior type buildings. But again, bottom line is we did adjust for the age, we did adjust for the land, etc. And again, I don't know how you get up. So our average for sales, one last thing, our average for sales are $49. The subject's on for $83. Again, I think I adjusted conservatively enough to get up to about $65 to $70 a square foot, but not to the number $84 a square foot it's on for now around it. That's all we have.
I actually went by here. You need to explain this business operation to me.
Sure.
Is it actually manufacturing or just storage?
No, it's manufacturing. I mean, storage and manufacturing as far as they might be the largest supplier of building materials in North America. I mean, they have hundreds of facilities throughout the nation. And like I said, so if you look at the aerials, you can see that the land itself, I mean, there's a bunch of dirt there, there's some paving, but you can see that they like to use their land and like to use their buildings quite a bit, which makes sense because, these are bricks and blocks and stuff that's kind of harsh on there. And there's no reason for them to build these facilities in superior nature because they've never leased them out. I've been doing this 13 years for them. They're always owner occupied. I've never seen them lease out one of them. So that's kind of what they do there.
Okay.
I have a question because I noticed in the assessor's comps that he had the quality of the property set at good, whereas the comps that he provided were average and fair plus, which caused some significant adjustments in his valuation. Did you provide any evidence to the assessor's office in the informal to show why you felt this was an inferior property or why it shouldn't be, have quality of good versus something lower?
Right. Well, we've gone over that with them on the informal year after year, and I'm not sure in past years they might have lowered the value at the informal level. I'm not sure if it was lowered. Just the fact that the prior year value was $2,950,000 exactly makes me think that either it was lowered by the board or informally. But yes, the county should know that. And I'll be honest with you, I don't believe I did this informal. I'm hoping somebody at that firm did this. But yes, they should know why good is really not a fair, statement for this type of property.
The board did. The board did lower this last year.
We said it.
Oh,
yes.
okay.
Yeah, we said it.
Yeah, we said it lower. So you sneered at us in the beginning, but we.
Oh, no. I promise. Wow, what I meant was, I've done so many hearings this year that my voice sounds like I'm tired of, I'm actually a little tired of doing hearings, mainly in Texas, so that's kind of what that was.
I'm just kidding.
I'll be interested to hear when we get to the assessor whether it's the age that affects that rating.
Okay, we'll hear from the assessor now.
Yes. So I had done a market income analysis. It suggested an income indicated value of $4,337,000. Comparable sales suggested a market value of $4,130,000. The tax agent provided their own comparable sales analysis. He also mentioned during the hearing that the building was built with low quality materials, but he did not provide any evidence to show this, no cost of materials or anything like that. So the income and the sales do support the current value. As far as the land value is concerned, it is based off of a 2016 sale, so it is probably going to get changed soon after we do a land analysis in this area.
Okay, so your median and mean, you're lower than your median and mean. So yes, you think you're.
Yes,
Okay.
and I would also just like to point out when he was doing his adjustments on the sales, I noticed that the building size adjustment for comp one, for example, is negative, even though the building is smaller. So I think it should be a positive adjustment. Yes, and he did that consistently through each of his comps.
Did you hear that? What can you respond to that for me?
Yeah. Yeah, I'd like to respond to a few things. The first question I have is, did the appraiser send his evidence to us? Because I don't see it on our server here.
Yes.
He said yes.
Okay, well, unfortunately I don't have that, but let me go to our adjustments because I have a feeling this is going to be an issue that we've dealt with for many years unless we did it wrong. Oh, yes, that's what I figured that. So this is an issue that I was actually at the training for appraisal, and we actually got the person teaching it a little confused, and they actually ended up obviously agreeing with us in the sense that, okay, so if it's something is superior, you subtract. That's the like adjustment rule. Superior, subtract, add, addition if it's better. When I say superior, subtract, you're looking at the comparables versus the subject. If a comparable is smaller, all else being equal, it will sell for more per square foot, economy of scale. That means that comparable is superior because it would sell for more being smaller. That's why we adjust in negative, because it's superior, you subtract a negative adjustment. I mean, we can talk about this for 8 hours straight, and I would love to, but I have zero doubt that we are correct in that adjustment. Now, even if somehow the board believes differently, they're very minimal. Oh, okay, that's fine. But they're very minimal adjustments anyway. So that's fine. It was like 3 to 5% adjustments. And let me say also in rebuttal, because it's very minimal for that. Let me say in rebuttal in the sense that in general, whether it was last year and the board looked at it or was this year, because I don't have the appraisers comparables, this is what happens throughout the nation is they're going to usually be vastly superior or at least superior to the subject typically. Now, if they're not superior to the subject, especially on the income, especially things being leased out, they're going to be vastly superior, especially to the condition. But even for a sale, you want to have your facility nicer. So these are going to be better in condition and probably quality, etc. If not, if they're making these massive adjustments upward to properties they consider fair, well, their adjustments are probably too high then. If they have some comps that are these metal type building like the subject is, I mean, that's something I don't need to go over as far as like some in-depth, how did they build this facility? Well, you can see that most of the building is metal on the outside. But the point being is that if they did fair comps, they adjusted too much higher and looking at the subject too nicely. And if they used superior comps that are good, they didn't make enough adjustments downward for those comps. So I don't have to look at their evidence to know for basically what it comes down to throughout the nation, which is when appraisers look at this unfairly, it's that their comps are either superior or their comps are similar, but then they adjust upward. So that's all I can tell you.
I would like to ask the assessors a question about the land, because you had indicated that the land, you had this whole elaborate argument around the 9.2 acres on the land, but the assessor's office on this comparison chart doesn't even show an acre.
We transferred it to square footage.
Right, but that's the equivalent of about 1 acre, isn't it?
No, it's 9.
Oh, that's 9.
33,560, and that's like 407,000.
Oh, that's right. Okay. So, did you have anything to add with regards to his argument though on that land square footage?
That's low. The valuation is low.
Yeah.
You admit it's low, don't you?
Well, I have suspicions. I can't say one way or the other because it was based off of a 2016 sale.
Right, but it's the county's value. I mean, we're not disputing the county's value on their own land.
Okay.
Okay, so you think it's valued low, Raphael, at the 3.9, so you're not willing to go with his 3.4.
No, ma'am.
Okay. I understand what he's saying about the quality of the building. Do you at least understand how the assessor came up with his valuation, or you just think that you just can't figure out why it went up $1 million, 40% over last year?
Well, based on sales and based on everything, like I said, I can understand some increase. But again, I mean, we just have to go back to see what the board did last year, and they really understood what type of property this was. But I'm even admitting that I can understand some increase, but no, I don't understand the massive increase.
It's about a 5% difference between the average and the good, but it's a 16% difference on this fair plus one. I don't know what he would fall into or what it is that he thinks that he would fall into, but you know, the assessor's office says that they didn't get any evidence other than his statement that it was built with lower quality materials.
Well, it's metal siding. I mean, we have pictures of it.
Yeah, but it looked like the comps that the assessor office used were a lot metal as well.
Yes, the
But didn't
median,
they make adjustments upwards of those?
adjustment upwards for exterior wall?
Comps.
No.
No, for just adjustments period for condition or quality or whatever.
Yes, we did.
And
Yeah, but
Well,
his comps were all average and fair plus, but yours was good.
And that was my question.
That's what I'm saying, is that's incorrect, because the building is not good.
Well, that was my question a while ago. Is that based on this being a 7 or 8 year old building and the others being 20 to 30? That you can, I mean, I know you can trash out a new building in a year and it can go from excellent to fair, but this building appears to be, at least on the outside, to be in good condition from the pictures we see and that are in evidence.
Well, I'm sorry, I just wanted to just interject a second and say, yes, the condition for the year built is probably good, but I'm saying overall, we take the construction quality and design, et cetera, buildings that are built brand new that aren't even technically good in a sense. So, I mean, that's all I can tell you is that just compared to good industrial buildings, to us, this is absolutely not. So that's all we can say.
Okay, I'm going to close the hearing on BOE number 115, and we'll open up the hearing on BOE 116, which is item 2 on our agenda, account number 182501960. This is 3700 South Broadway, so we flipped way to the other side of town. The assessor has this at $2,344,652, and you have it at $1,003,000, which I can tell you is the taxable. So, you say current market conditions, and you said that on all of these. So, what do you mean by current market conditions warrant a lower valuation than the assessor has?
Well, that's just us being not as specific as we should be, but market conditions can almost mean anything. So I apologize for us not putting more specific information on that. Essentially, market conditions, I mean, on this one, for example, we have sales comparables and costs as information towards the lower value. So that's all I can tell you about that.
Okay. Let me hear from the assessor.
Okay. Market.
Should I go? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
The market income analysis suggested an income indicated value of $3,217,445. Comparable sales suggest a market value of $5,785,838. These are raw sales, no adjustments. Tax agent provided their own comparable sales and cost analysis. My land analysis supports a land value of $287,277 an acre. Their land analysis suggests a value of $93,950 an acre. The income approach is the preferred approach and supports current value because we couldn't make adjustments for the raw sales.
We didn't actually go over our evidence, sorry.
Sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry. Well, I thought you just had made your argument, but go ahead.
Oh, no. Well, there's a perfect example. I'm glad the appraiser went first, and I don't mind if they talk more about their evidence. There's a perfect example, and I hate to say it, of this appraiser who seems to be completely overvaluing properties that are inferior to other properties. And this is a great example. And a lot of things that we have tons of properties, many hundreds or thousands of properties that are this inferior nature, and we get those because counties tend to overvalue them or do mass appraisal. I mean, what we have here is a property, by the way, that unless I'm incorrect, on page number 2, was valued at $1,303,044 the prior year. Now it's valued at $2,344,652, and not only that, now the appraiser's saying, it should actually be worth $3 or $4 million. I mean, are you kidding? It's a 1974 property. That alone should raise every red flag in the book. I mean, look at the cover picture. It's low ceiling, built 1974. But no, we should probably, I don't even have to see the appraiser's evidence to know, again, either they're comparing it to superior properties that are similar, but superior properties by far, or they're comparing it to similar properties and adjusting those properties upwards for some reason. So again, we have sales to show you that, no, this property is more like $1,159,000, nowhere near the $3 or $4 million that somehow the appraiser is saying it's worth today. I mean, on page number 3, it says right there, 1974 built, low ceiling, it's 37,196 square feet on 5.6 acres. So also what this appraiser is saying is with this property or last property, both the other appraisers and the board don't know what they're doing. That's basically what they're saying. They're saying, oh, no, this is not how you look at this. You need to look at this as a vastly superior property, all properties, and compare it to those as such. Well, that's not the case whatsoever. If you look past the pages here, you have aerials, the front view. I mean, even look at the paving there. I don't even know how much money they give to the asphalt or paving on this, but it should be negative because that needs to be replaced right away. And not just that, this subject looks terrible, to be honest with you. It's not just that it's built in 1974, it has low ceiling and doesn't look that attractive whatsoever. Not only that, another thing to note on this is if you go to our last picture, which is, I don't know if that's a page number, but I think it's page 11, there's a portion of this property that's just like a metal shed type building. Did they take that into account as part of the 37,000 square feet? I almost guarantee you they didn't take that into account. In other words, are they using properties that are built in the 60s, 70s that also have a major section that's basically just like a metal warehouse property? I can pretty much tell you they haven't if they're coming up with that value. But not only do we have sales that do not have the same situation as the subject, meaning they're all essentially, I believe, just retail buildings, not this metal warehouse that somehow part of this property is. But if you look on page 12, we have 3 sales. By the way, of our sales, 2 of these they were built 1990, 2009, and 1986. And we're built in 1974. Now, the fact we only have a negative adjustment for our comparables of only 8 to 17% makes no sense to me whatsoever. Those should have been negative 50%. How do you compare a 2009 built building to 1974? It's probably worth half or double what the subject is worth. Why we were so conservative, I have no idea. But even being that conservative, you're looking at these sales, even before adjustments, that sold between $25 to $44 a square foot. The subject built in 1974 is on for $63 a square foot. After looking at that evidence alone, how did the appraiser even come to the value near the $63 a square foot? Now, these sales, which we give a full COSTAR report starting on page 14, I'll show you one of the most similar sales, which is newer, is on page 18. Page 18 is a newer property that sold for, I believe, let's see here.
You're talking about the assessor's comps or yours?
Yes.
Oh, our comps. Sold for $35 a square foot. That building looks almost identical to the subject. In fact, it's also a used car dealership building. So it's literally the same type of property, almost the same year built, but it's, by the way, it's at least 10 years newer than the subject. It's a used car, and there's a chance that that property did include kind of a metallic warehouse part of it. But the point is, it's exactly the same type building. It's even newer, and the entire property sold for $35 a square foot and we're over for $60. How can they explain that? Either way, we've given those 3 sales that all support much lower per square foot, are much newer than a subject property. Now, if you want to look at this on a cost basis, which is probably maybe not the best way to look at it, the point being is that we have improvements, especially built in 1974, at $512,000. You know what the improvement value of the county is? $1,521,000. So we have it at 500,000 and they have it at over 1.5 million. What they're trying to tell you is a 1974 low building property with terrible paving, doesn't look attractive whatsoever. Somebody's going to walk in there and say, just for the building alone, I'm going to pay 1.5 million. And by the way, that includes the metal type portion of it in the back. That's not going to happen. That is not going to happen in any reality. But somehow their evidence shows you properties that, oh, the improvement value alone makes 0 cents. We have the improvement value of 500,000. They have it at $1.5 million. And that shows you, by the way, that just the difference in increase in value from the prior year. So, and not just that, we also have some land comparables, many land comparables, starting on page 26 and 27, that actually show you that maybe even the land's too high. I mean, that's less of a portion of this value, but in general, we still supply land sales that show you that overall on a cost basis, it's much lower value for the subject property. So that secondary weight evidence is our cost approach, showing you that the improvement is way too high and possibly the land value is too high. But either way, that's especially based on sales and just the type of property, year built, et cetera. There is no reason for this increase, and it supports the value of about 1.2 million. That's all we have.
So what do you think the acreage, the value of the land of the 5.6 acres?
We have, let's see what we put here as far as the land value. And by the way, as I know, land is always hard to get lowered, but we have it at about $2.15 based on our comparables of land.
Okay, let's hear from you, sis.
The sale that he brought up on 6,000 Tinker Diagonal is part of a property portfolio, and there was a later sale, I think on the same date, so it might have been part of the same thing for $8 million. I don't know if it was additional or separate. So there's that.
You're saying that his comps aren't valid?
At least that one.
And which one was that?
That one's 6,000 Tinker Diagonal Street.
Is that the old Hudaberg?
Mm-hmm.
See, all that sold.
Right.
They're a big parcel sale.
All right.
I don't think, is that the one that you were referencing? Was it the 6,000 Tinker Diagonal, or was it the 4120 West 6th?
Are you talking to me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I was referring to that. We had the COSTA report of that one. It does say multi-property sale, but it is a loan here on COSTA saying sold for 35. And by the way, he's saying our other two sales are very valid and they're much newer and sold for less, so that's fine too.
Well, I'm not sure if he did say the other two were valid. Or what did you?
I would have to look at them specifically to see if they are valid sales.
Well, why didn't you look at them previously? Of course they're valid sales. You looked at the Tinker one and decided that's not valid, so why wouldn't you look at those two?
Which two?
The first two sales, they're just saying you found out that the third sale, you found out information on the third sale, you obviously looked into it. Why wouldn't you have looked at the first two sales yet? Because you're not admitting that they are valid and you did look into them? Doesn't make sense. Why would you look at the third sale, not those two?
I was looking at the 6,000 Tinker Diagonal Street because you had said that was the best comparable that you had, and I wanted to see the nature of the sale for that specific one.
Okay, so the first two sales are valid then, as far as you're concerned.
Well,
Pretty obvious.
he
Which
wasn't
two?
dealing with the first two. He was just dealing with that one. Okay, so let's.
Oh, that's fine. But
Okay.
he said that he didn't look at the other two, but they're valid. And by the way, number sale 3 is valid. It's just a multi-property sale.
It might have been part of a portfolio sale, meaning there was other sales associated with it. So the value could be more than that. There could have been more sales associated with that one sale.
No, that's the allocated value. Can we just say this in fairness? Many times counties give multi-property sales, and they give the allocated value in the COSTA report, and they try to say that that's the perfect sale. It's not a perfect sale, but it's definitely not invalid.
Okay,
Well-
so I will say to the assessor's office on the comps that you provided, if I'm reading it correctly, there was a 22 comp on there and a 25. It's 22 sale and a 25 sale. February 25 sale, the one that sold for 700,000,
Right.
which would work in his favor. And then that July of 22 for 2 million, that's pretty old.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is why I didn't really go with sales, because it was also really far away from where my income was, and I thought that the income approach actually provided more defensible value for this property. And I did separate out the service garage from the office in my income analysis.
How many
Okay,
buildings?
let me ask you this, is your income analysis based on buildings that leased out that were 30,000 plus square feet and they were built in the 60s and 70s? Is that correct?
It was
I
just
bet you it's not.
it was just based on the submarket of the area.
Right.
So
Exactly.
it was $13
I don't have to see your evidence to know that.
Well, so, I'm sorry, go ahead, Raphael.
All right. So according to my analysis, a service garage in that area would rent out for about $13 a square foot, while the office would rent out for about $10 a square foot.
So,
On this subject property.
Yes, there's 2 service garages and 1 office, I believe. So I put the 2 service garages together.
Is there a way to show when those, because I think one of those service garages is newer than the others. When was it built? Because it's a paint facility primarily. I've been on this site, so unfortunately.
84, I think.
so which approach would you like for us to take? Do you want us to take the sales approach, or do you want us to take the income approach?
Well, our contention is that number one, to take the sales approach because we have comps that are fair and actually superior.
Okay.
And as the appraiser admitted, that how can you take their income if they're not 30,000 square foot retail properties that are built in the 60s and 70s, not specifically leased out that size and that age? How can you take that as valid information or fair information on income approach?
Well, you know, I don't. If you're going to do income approach, I don't know where the age is a factor,
It can be.
It's a huge factor.
because
Because if you have a newer property, it's going to lease out for twice or 3 times as much.
Maybe.
unless it's owner occupied.
I'm just saying in general. I mean, it's going to lease out for way more.
Okay, we're too far apart on this one. So, you guys got anything else?
Well, you're asking for the same valuation essentially as what it was last year, right?
Yeah.
Last year and the last 3 years before that, it was $1,303,044. So you're asking for no increase.
Well, we're actually asking for $1.2 million, so a little bit less.
Okay, because we thought we showed $1,000,003. I get that.
Oh,
That's what the documents say.
Yeah, your paperwork is $1,000,003.
Okay, then $1.3 million it is.
Okay.
Anything else?
Okay, I'm going to close 116 and go to item 3 on the agenda, which is BOE number 117. Account number R209-111-040. This is at 521 Howard Boulevard in Hara. This is Old Castle Lawn and Garden. And my notes indicate that the assessor began at $1,413,000 plus and lowered it to $1,220,000, and you would like to have us set the fair market value at $700,000. You guys are way apart on this one. And I've been to this place. Okay, so tell me how you arrived at this.
Okay, and this is the one that's valued at $1,220,000 currently?
Yes.
Okay, let me just pull up our information real quick here.
Sierra Industrial Park.
Yeah, what's strange is if you look at our packet, our packet doesn't make a lot of sense on our page 2, but first thing is to notice our cover page, and again, this is an industrial metal type building. On our page number 2, it says that the value, yes, it's at $1,220,000, but I think the prior year was at $919,688. So it's still a pretty good percentage increase from the year before. We have evidence on both sales costs and income pro forma. I guess we're able to find the size and similar age of lease comps for this one, for the pro forma. It looks like a requested value on the state is $230,000, which makes no sense. So essentially, I'm not sure what we wrote in our initial filing, but the value seems to be, from our evidence, about $800,000. And I'll explain that as we go forward. Page number 3, some information on the subject. Again, built 2009, and here's a perfect example again of, but it's a smaller property, 14,080 square feet. Meaning it's not an older building, but like if you looked at the cover page of that property, you could have told me that it was built in 1985, 1995. I would have believed you in a second. Meaning just the look of the property and the quality of construction design. There's properties built in 2009 that are vastly superior in that respect. But either way, it is what it is. Now, the land value is very low on this. Again, this is the county land value, and we're not disputing that. But again, they have this over 31 acres, total value of $76,758. If they think the value is a little more than that, then they have the right to go ahead and increase that land value the following year. We're not saying it is. I'm just saying, well, that's not really in dispute. It's a land value. So we're just talking about what they're saying is that the building alone is worth $1,336,978. Now, I know they lowered the value to $1,220,000,
Right.
which is essentially, though, that building alone, they're saying this year is worth well more than the entire property was the prior year. But either way, we're saying that the building value is too high and the overall property is too high in value. Just very briefly, we did supply some pictures of the subject. Again, that's, a completely metal warehouse type building, I believe. Our sales on page 9 and 10, I will let the board review them if they want, but there are some sales here. One was built in 2001, and the other ones were definitely older than the subject. Again, it's hard to find these exact type of quality construction buildings that are new. But for an example of our sale 2, sold in 2000, it was built in 2001, we built in 2009, so it's only 8 years older. It's 7,315 square feet building, and it sold for $47.85 a square foot. Now, one thing you can say is, oh, wait a minute, that's less than an acre, and you have 31 acres. Right, but the county themselves only gives about $75,000 for the entire land value. So if you take that $75,000 and essentially apply it to sale number 2, you're at maybe $55 or $60 a square foot, meaning that adjustment upwards is not a lot. So how are we at over $100 a square foot? When most of the value is based on the building, and our sale 2, which was built in 2001, sold for $47.80.
But you're surely not saying that because they valued the acreage where it is, that they would necessarily value the same no matter where the acreage was.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that's a good point. That's a very good point. I'm just saying that's a very low price and a fair price that sale 2 sold for overall is $48. And we're over $100.
But I'm going to tell you one of the problems that I have with your argument, and I realize that the buildings that are being thrown up now, and I'm calling them thrown up now because they're coming up all over the place, are concrete buildings. And you seem to be saying that a concrete building is sufficiently superior to a metal building such that you just aren't giving any quality to a metal building at all. I mean,
well, no, I'm saying that using, like this one is very metal building. If you look at our comps, if you look pictures of our comps, which hopefully the county supplied pictures of all their comps, and if they didn't, that's a real problem. But if you look at all the pictures, these buildings look very similar to the subject. And even though a lot of these buildings were built, 20 years before the subject, why do they look so similar? It's because of the metallic metal nature of these buildings, which is vastly inferior to a concrete block building. So what I'm saying is, if the county's just using concrete block buildings, that is completely unfair. And if they are, they have to adjust tremendously in value because those are vastly superior buildings.
Okay.
But in general, and I'll go briefly through the rest of it. Again, we have our cost analysis on page 24. Now, I know cost is not necessarily the best way to value industrial or retail property, but it just goes to show you that on our page 24, we have the improvement value of about $700,000 for Marshall and Swift, and the county has it at now 1.3 million, or actually a little lower than that now that they reduced it, but it's nowhere near the 700,000 improvement value we have. So we have sales, we have the cost approach, and on this particular one, I believe we found lease comparables. Now, I'm trying to look at the date of when these were built, because if they were built a while ago, then yes, they are superior to the subject in year built, which make this a less, let me just see here. And I don't think we adjusted for that. So the problem is, if you look at the lease comps we have, they look similar to the subject, but in all fairness, they are older. Now, if you took the lease comps for what they're leasing for, $5 a square foot, basically, if you look at our page 30, you get a value of about $821,000. So then you have to possibly adjust upwards somewhat to the year built of the subject, which I understand. But the issue is we are using at least similar type buildings. And again, if you just look at the pictures of our lease comps and the pictures of the sales, you'll say they're very similar to the subject property. So based on the income approach, based on the sales approach, and based on cost, we are definitely lower than the current county value. That's all we have.
Okay, but you tell me why, with all that you said, why would this building be worth less December 31st of 2024 than the $919,000?
Oh, you mean the prior year value?
Yeah.
I mean, what can I tell you? It's just based on our information on sales, income, and cost. I don't know what else to say besides that.
Okay. Okay, we'll hear from the assessor.
Yeah, so we did adjust this down based on income and sales. The tax agent did provide their own comparable sales income and cost analysis. Comparable sales analysis suggested a market value of $1,221,392. Income analysis suggested an income indicated value of $1,203,843. So we adjusted down to the $1,220,000. Land analysis, he is correct in saying that we are pretty low on the land. My analysis supports a land value of $18,437. Which will probably have to be adjusted in the future at some point. I should have mentioned that earlier that the increases, I'm sure that you've already known, they mentioned in previous hearings that the increases that we've seen in a lot of these commercial properties is due to a new model that is being used to justify and defend these values and raises. And we also found
that last week.
Yes, and we also found that the median after these increases was just north of $70 a square foot. So that is your typical steel building built around 1970, 1980. That's what you mostly find around Oklahoma County.
A little bit of a concern though that on the comps though, I'm assuming from this new software, are pretty old, December of 2019.
Yes, that is due to the nature of commercial. There's not a lot of sales.
Right.
So we do have to.
Pretty far back.
We do have to
run. 3 of
run.
them are 21, and then 2 are 22. So I get that there's probably nothing more recent. But.
So either we have to expand the area that we're looking at, or we have to expand the time in which we view sales. And I think I decided to expand the time instead of the area.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, you get the last word.
Well, the last word is, at least I think they're a lot more fair looking at the subject type and property on this one than the other 2 cases, but I guess that's not really a last word. That's all we have.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to close BOE number 117. And your last one is going to be BOE number 118, which is 1401 Enterprise Avenue. And the account number is R142-261,000. And the assessor has this down from 1,502,558 to 1,415,000 flat, and you are at 800,000. So you guys are more than $500,000 difference. So we'll hear from you first.
Okay, let me see. What's interesting is, for some reason, I don't. Let me see. What is I'm sorry. Can you tell me again the original starting value and then the new value?
1,502,558 was lowered to 1,415,000.
Okay, because I didn't have that on my sheet for hearing today, but let me see if we're incorrect about that, or if.
Well,
And it doesn't say that somehow it was not. This hearing is definitely for today on that one. Is that correct?
yes. And you're at 800,000. Oh, you don't have this in your records? Is that what the issue is?
Yeah, but let me look it up because I'm trying to figure out why.
Do I need to
Not in our record.
do I need to repeat the account number?
That would help, sure.
Okay, R142261000.
Okay, let me find that here. Yeah, he says 141401000.
No, 142
Oh.
261,000.
That is so strange.
Or
Oh, I think I see it here.
this is
Okay.
Reading Midwest
Yeah.
Distribution.
I do see that here.
Okay.
Okay, let me pull that up. I'm trying to figure out why we didn't. Okay. Do you have our evidence packet on this one also?
Yes.
Huh. Interesting. It is very interesting.
This is a nice looking building.
Yeah, this one is definitely a nicer building. I think if I've got the right one, yes, it's at 1041 Enterprise Avenue. Is that correct?
Yes. 1401.
I'll just go over this briefly. Again, the prior year value on our page 2 is $1,201,050. There wasn't a huge increase, and I think you said that they lowered it now to close to 1.2 million. Is that correct?
It's at 1,415,000.
415. Okay, so there's still somewhat of an increase, but at least on this one they were somewhat conservative on an increase in value for this year compared to the prior year. Looks like we have sales at about $1 million and costs at about $850,000. So even though we put our value in there, you're saying of over $800,000, I believe that the value is closer to $950,000 or so for this subject property, and that's mainly based off the sales. The subject, even though it's a nicer building than some of the buildings we've had, it is built in 1978, so that is very important to take into account. 28,000 square foot building on 2.54 acres of land. And again, they have the building valued at $1,121,508, just the building alone. Our information on sales, and by the way, we did supply some pictures of the subject property. On page number 10, our sales that we have here, I believe 5 sales that support a lower value. And they were built, some were built newer than the subject and some are older than the subject, but there's a good range of sales here. The ones that are closest built to the subject sold for $46 a square foot and $48 a square foot, and we're on for 54. So there is kind of that increase. I mean, if you go back to about $48 a square foot, which is our most similar comps, I believe the prior year value was about $43 a square foot. So I think our most similar comps do support at least somewhat of an increase in the prior year, but unfortunately, but overall our comps seem to support a value of about $1,035,000 in value for the subject. Additionally, again, we supplied all the CoStar printouts of those sales, etc. And then we do come to the cost approach on page 21, which does have here the improvement value, of course, which is less, like 586,000 is what we have as our improvement value, which is of course far less than the county's value. So in conclusion on this one, it's very similar to other cases where it seems that the county is vastly overvaluing the improvements of properties that were built, either built in the 70s or newer that are lesser quality. And then we have sales to back that up on most of these cases, including this one. But that's all we have.
So what do you think the land value is worth on this one?
I would assume it's what the county has. I don't know personally, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Did you provide information that showed your calculation to get to the 850,000 cost? It's 847,000.
In every one of our information, and by the way, we call it total RCNLD, which is total replacement cost new less depreciation, but it also includes multipliers, includes everything. And in every one of our cases, we did supply Marshall and Swift pages that show you how do we get the replacement cost new, how do we get the life expectancy, how do we get the depreciation. So we actually give you the pages directly from Marshall and Swift that gives you that information. For example, on this one on page 21, in all the cases we have, it separates every section, gives you all the factors you need, including multipliers, extra features, which is paving, includes everything and comes up with the value, which is, happens to be far less than the county.
I'm looking for that, but you understand, you sent us 64 pages with this, right?
Right.
So,
page 21 on this one in particular. I have 37.
That doesn't help me because our page numbers are not the same as yours. So I'm going through it, but I have not yet found, and I went through it the other day. I usually look for that. I see your comps and I see your high level income valuation, but I don't see the breakdown of that 850 or 847. Here it is. I found it. It's page 47.
585,994.
What was the value last year?
1,200,000 and, if I'm right, 1,201,000. Yeah.
But you need to tell me why you think it's worth almost half less than that now.
Well, I don't. I think it's worth a total of about $1 million at least. And that's due to the sales and also the lower value on the improvement value, which again is our RCNLD number, separate from the land value.
Okay. We'll hear from the assessor.
Comparable sales suggest a market value of $1,418,152. Income indicated value of $1,410,212. Very tight range right there, which is what we'd like to see. I went with the $1,415,000 adjustment. I felt like that was the most defendable value. Tax agent provided their own comparable sales and cost analysis. What year built is this building?
1978.
1970. We like to use the cost approach for newer buildings. I feel like that is gonna hit, the cost approach will hit the market for those. On older buildings, we typically go with sales or income. That being said, my land analysis still came up with a higher value than what we currently have at $162,123 per acre. Adjusted the total value to $1,415,000.
Did you look in his cost analysis at all to see what the difference is between yours and his?
I didn't do a full cost analysis. All I did was just the land part, just to show how far apart we were on those. It would have added a bit more value if I just took his cost analysis, the rest of his cost analysis, that it was correct, if I just took that to be correct.
I'm sorry, could you say that again? I want to make sure.
So, how many acres is this property?
So if you took it as 850
2.5.
plus,
162, 120. Plus.
Well, 850 are valued with the land improvement.
Right. If I were to take his building cost as correct, then it would be 991,301 on the cost side.
without land.
Sold.
That's without land.
That is with
Oh,
That's
no, that's with
that
land.
is with land.
That's with the land.
Right. But again, we think that income or sales are more defendable for older buildings. It's more reflective of the
This is an
market.
older building. So
Yes.
I-
1978.
Okay.
I agree with that general statement. That last statement that Fraser, I absolutely agree with that. The problem is if you're not using similar type sales or similar type lease comparables with similar size and age, then it's not fair to use those approaches. That's our contention.
Let's look at the associated comps.
So you don't like any of his comps?
Well, I don't have any, but from what I've heard in past cases, I'm pretty sure they're not similar. But I don't have his information.
Southwest 29th, Southwest 21st, Southwest 15th, Northwest 5th, and Will Rogers Parkway. So I would say probably the Southwest one's closest. This is Midwest City, right? So 1, 2, 3 of them are pretty close.
It's not Midwest City.
No, isn't it?
It's kind of stockyard.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's
it's
down, yeah, south of the fort, just right south of the fort.
Okay.
It's still not bad. Southwest 15th.
Right. But are they similar in age and size? That's the question.
In size, there are a few there. The best one is comp number 1, and it's only 100 square foot difference. Floor height's the same. It's got half the land. Average quality, just like the subject. And effective age is 13 years newer.
Right, and that's effective age. That's not even year. Okay, effective age. I know.
Right. That includes any remodels or improvements made to the original building.
Okay.
Rich, you got any questions?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Do you have more in front of us? Do you know?
I do not. That's all I got for today, I believe.
No, I mean, period. Did you have more?
Are you talking about more hearings
Yes.
this year?
Yes.
I wouldn't know. I would assume yes, but I don't know if we've done already. I don't know, honestly.
Okay, yes, too many to know. Okay, I'm gonna close this hearing and we will meet on Friday to set the value, and so probably you're not in town, so I'm gonna say Monday. You'll get the letter from us, maybe Tuesday.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, so what are we on for this? Or do we have anything yet?
Next week I have the 3rd. I have 4. And I have 2 that are waiting that are commercial that I received yesterday while I was out. And they're all commercial.
So what day of the week is the 3rd?
The 2nd, the Tuesday.
Tuesday. Then we have how many?
Right now I have 4 and I have 2 that are waiting that I can throw on there,
Okay.
or I can push them to the following week.
Okay, so Tuesday, right? Mm-hmm. Tuesday, okay.
I can put those 2 either on Tuesday, or I can hold them for a Wednesday to say I get more,
Okay,
in. But if not, then
okay. So you got time for the days with this is just Wednesday. Okay. Okay, if there's nothing further, I'll entertain a motion.
Adjourn.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, so I was really asking if we were gonna